pretty much lying his way into stealing the last election, more or less. Maybe not just Carney himself, but the Liberal Party has a political messaging, and I would call it warfare machine.
Holy moly, do we ever have a packed episode of breaking news today. Wow. If you're feeling a little tired or sluggish today, don't worry. You're about to have a lot of adrenaline pumping through your veins. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, and comment your thoughts down below. Share this video as well. The unelected CRTC just quietly gave itself more power to control what you're allowed to see online. And we're going to go through all of the details of that hidden announcement that has grave consequences for us. You know, when the DOJ is exposing Canadian drug cartels and the RCMP isn't, and Canada insists that it's only 1%, we don't have a problem, pretty sure we have a national security problem. But hey, the Liberals still want you to blame Stephen Harper, right? That's how it always goes.
The time that he served in Prime Minister Harper's office, right. And they were overrun with credit card spending and government cutbacks. They've got no lessons to take, as the finance minister said, from that member.
I'm sorry to pipe in so quickly, but this just came to me. Isn't it incredibly weird how the Liberals attack Stephen Harper all these years later for running deficits during the global financial crisis, but in the same breath, they praise Mark Carney for being a global economic superpower for steering Canada through the exact same crisis, even though that's not even the job of the governor of the Bank of Canada. Like, that actually doesn't make sense. You can't have it both ways, because I think the part that they're really hoping nobody is remembering and people just forget and don't realize is that you cannot separate the two. Mark Carney was governor of the Bank of Canada under Stephen Harper's government, which means everything Mark Carney did was kind of two hands on the same steering wheel as Stephen Harper and Stephen Harper's finance minister, Jim Flaherty. The Liberal logic here is trying to, one, rewrite history and rewrite job descriptions, but also trying to make two things that can't possibly be true to be true at the same time, and it completely folds under any remote scrutiny. Because if Mark Carney was Robin during the 2008 financial crisis, well, then that means that Stephen Harper and his government were Batman.
His constituents and mine are struggling to make ends meet, and it's this government's reckless spending that's making matters worse.
Mr. Speaker, that member is an experienced member, so experienced, in fact, he was here for that 10-year river of Harper red ink, the biggest budget deficits on record in the history of the country. And it's funny, he wasn't talking about that then. And what he's done now is he's voting against a budget that creates opportunity right throughout Atlantic Canada, right throughout the province of New Brunswick, that creates opportunity for young people in New Brunswick, in energy, in infrastructure. We're going to keep building this country despite that member, his history of red ink, and his negativism.
And the conveniently left out portion is that Harper left with a surplus. So yeah, we did have a deficit during that time frame, and he fixed it. Actually, Canada had one of the strongest recoveries in the G7 after 2008 because of really the combined strategy of Stephen Harper, Jim Flaherty, and then some of the shifting of rates that Mark Carney would have done at the time.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think anybody's been able to cram that many slogans into one answer, and this is coming from me. This is coming from me. Mr. Speaker, let's take housing. He says they're spending billions of dollars more on housing. The results are out today. Housing starts down 17% year over year. Where we need the most, in Toronto, down 42% year over year. Vancouver, 36% year over year. Ontario, down 35%. And BC, down 22%. Why is it that the more Liberals spend, the less that we can build?
And let's just take a look at the OECD, which is a completely non-biased, non-partisan reporting that takes place. I once had a Liberal tell me that the OECD is not a trustworthy source. And I was like, do you actually know what the OECD is? I don't think you do, actually. Anyway, though, their forecast annual real gross domestic product per capita per year from 2020 to 2030 has Canada dead last.
We're living in a much more dangerous world, much more complex world. And in that context, we've seen over the last years not only the increased trade tensions, but it was linked to the deterioration of the international security architecture. And now, when you look at what Canada's vision and plan is our vision is to build Canada strong. We believe that there are lots of things we cannot control in the world right now, but there are a lot of things that we can control. And meanwhile, our plan is to protect, create, attract. Protect jobs that are affected by tariffs, create jobs because we will have a new defense industrial strategy, and of course attract talent and attract investments. And we just announced that we would have one of the biggest budget in the world to attract 1,000 new researchers, while other countries are taking a toll against academic freedom and cutting science. We will double down on science and we'll double down on research.
A massive amount of foreign talent is leaving Canada. They leave Canada. Yeah, they come here, they leave. I wonder why they are leaving. And this is from a CTV News article that was just updated today. It says many of the immigrants have been in Canada between 10 and 20 years and cite several reasons for leaving to work overseas. But the most common reason they pointed to is a feeling of unfulfilled potential in themselves. They want to give the best of themselves professionally and do not see the opportunity to do that in Canada. And in this article, there's a number of different stories from immigrants, some of which even sponsored their family members to come here. A couple of the notable ones here is frustration has been building in recent years when he realized that his friends working in the United States were getting ahead faster than he was. And I have long maintained this position of mine where I believe one of the most evil things about mass immigration outside of changing the culture of your entire nation is that it's a lie. And it is so evil to lie to people like that. It's a very cruel and inhumane way to treat somebody, to try to entice them to come to your country, give up everything that they had for the Canadian dream that doesn't exist. What is the Canadian dream, actually? It's being taxed upwards of 40 to 50% of your income when you factor in provincial. And also, my gosh, if we factored in the GST and PST on all of our purchases, I can guarantee you our taxes are a lot higher than that. The Canadian dream is getting rejected from a job that you're probably overqualified for because you're white. You're not a big enough minority. Oh, unfortunately, you're straight, so we can't hire you. Oh, you're a man, we can't hire you. And then when you start to get really upset about that and you start talking about it, well, now you're a Trump mega psychopath who needs to leave the country. You better shut up because you're just too privileged. Yeah, you oppressor. We give you a broken system that causes you a lot of suffering that's not necessary. And then when you talk about that suffering, now you're a right-wing, far-right, radical conspiracy theorist. You're peddling misinformation. No, you're not. No, you're not. And at the end of that Canadian dream, when all is said and done and you feel incredibly depressed about where your life is, you feel stuck, then what does the Canadian dream offer you? Medical euthanasia, perhaps? Yeah, that they're trying to expand right now to people with mental illness and depression. So after the Canadian dream gives you so much hopelessness that you now feel depressed and you go see a doctor about it, they're going to recommend, you know what, actually, you're right. We actually don't have anything more to offer you. We don't. And so maybe if you're feeling a little depressed, my golly, all those medications you want the government to pay for with taxes, we would save a lot of money if we didn't have to do that anymore. You know, have you ever thought about MAID? What kind of a dream is that? Honestly, is this supposed to be Friday the 13th? Is this a nightmare, actually? Because it feels like that a lot. And then the worst part is that you are so villainized and you are treated horrendously by people who probably don't even know all of the little details of any of the things I just talked about. And they call you a traitor. Yeah, they say you're a problem. And if they can't remove your voice by taking you out, they certainly will try to with all kinds of overbearing, overreaching regulation. Actually, the CRTC has rewritten the definition of Canadian content, and it does sound quite innocent. I'll be honest, going through all the paperwork here. Yeah, sure. Okay, whatever. There was a couple big things in this one that, AI is not allowed to qualify. They've changed their point system, in essence, of what qualifies for Canadian content. It has to be 60% is the threshold, and they've added a whole bunch of different creative rules into that as well. And here is the part where, and like the actual impact of all of this, because most of it is pretty irrelevant to the average day person. It will influence what you see, hear on your radio, on your television, as well as on the internet and your social media algorithms. But the big part that I have to laugh at it, because if I didn't, I think I would just cry every day, which is the fact that all of this regulation is for Canadian culture, Canadian identity. What identity are you talking about? We literally had our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau at the time, go on mainstream media in America. And when somebody asked him about being Canadian, he said, well, we're not American. Is that a cultural identity marker for you? It's not. No, it's not. And with all of the mass immigration, there was a graph that came out last week showing that over 40% of newborns in Canada are not of Canadian origin.
The analogy that I used, think of a house party. Let's say there's 10 people there. 2 new people show up. They are going to enter the vibe of what's already going on. But if you have 12 people walk into a party of 10, things can change pretty quickly.
Immigration's been a cornerstone of Canada's GDP since World War II. Fine. No problem with that. And I think immigration is important when you bring them in at an adequate rate, no faster than your infrastructure can allow, and at a rate that you can adequately assimilate. The numbers we're doing at are literally 500% that number. Oh, there's no such thing as illegal immigrant. There's no this, there's no that. Let everybody in, open borders, blah, 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 blah. Here's the problem. You lose your country. Even the culture that you think is important, your liberal or democratic culture that you have now over associated with, just because everything is politicized, you are going to be the cause of your own demise. There already is a dogfight for power over Canada, and it's not traditional Canada in the driver's seat. It's China, it's India, it's these other nations that are kind of fighting over it, and they're now swaying elections.
Microplastics are infiltrating every part of our lives. Scientists estimate that we now consume a credit card's worth of plastic every single week through our food, water, and even the air that we breathe. One study found plastic particles in 100% of human lung samples. And even if you eat clean or avoid packaged foods, you're still being exposed. You can't opt out. And these plastics don't just sit in your body. They cross the gut lining, leach into your blood, and disrupt everything. They've been shown to alter gut bacteria, suppress your immune response, and increase your risk for neurodegenerative disease, metabolic disorders, and cancers. Some plastic toxins like BPA and phthalates mimic hormones. They interfere with fertility and damage DNA. But your gut can help you fight back. Kimchi 1 from Brightcore Nutrition is a potent ally in this toxic world. Packed with over 900 probiotic strains unique to kimchi and proven to break down BPA. It doesn't just support digestion, it helps protect your cells, your brain, your hormones, and your future. Today, you can get 25% off by clicking the link in the description of this video with the code Jasmine. Or, for an even better deal, call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. Give them a call now at 888-733-9420.
In the context of where Canada is in an increasingly dangerous world, with Mark Carney, in my view, pretty much lying his way into stealing the last election, more or less. Maybe not just Carney himself, but the Liberal Party has a political messaging, and I would call it warfare machine, which it's very clear now in some ways is getting some juice from Chinese Communist Party messaging.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. It's hugely dangerous.
And this ruling that's redefining what counts as Canadian content is just the first step. It's a little baby step of stuff that's mostly irrelevant, mostly pertaining to the film industry. It will ultimately end up impacting what you see, what you hear, and how expensive things cost in Canada in terms of production and foreign investment opportunities and all of that too. But it is really notable that the next shoe hasn't dropped yet, and that's coming very soon, which will be the CRTC's upcoming ruling on mandatory spending. including for news. Remember when Meta said, that's absurd, we're not doing that. What the? Cut your taxes and get some investment into your country. Are you kidding me? We're not paying for your media. What the hell? Because that's insane. And people will argue sometimes Australia had something somewhat similar, but incredibly and notably different than what Canada tried to implement. And guess what? Meta is not blocked from the news in Australia. But this new ruling that's coming, I'll keep an eye on it, will decide who gets funding, who gets platform priority, and who gets buried. And if you think for a second that it does not affect us in so many minute ways that subconsciously affect you, you don't even realize it, go and Google any news headline you feel like, and tell me on the first 2 pages of Google, outside of a very rare potential national post, out of the first 2 pages on Google from whatever it is you search, which companies are in the first 2 pages of your search results? And where do they lean politically? And again, you might have the random outlier, but that is certainly not a precedent. That is an abnormality in there. And critics will say, Jasmine, that has nothing to do with Bill C-11 or Bill C-18. No, that has everything to do with SEO, your search engine optimization. And to that, I would say, okay, great. So, you know, that news story I just told you to type in, take a screenshot of the search results here in Canada, and then go to the US and type in the exact same thing and take a screenshot of it there and tell me. Just tell me, what does it look like for you? Because the results are incredibly different.
Add on top of that, we're being told by people like Brian Lilly that the day after Carney wins a minority, his grinders are trying to get conservatives across the floor. Like you say, whether illegal or not, that's unfair to Canadian voters. And what's blowing my mind about it is, as I say, I just think it was a total psyop election, unprecedented. The cross currents that were going on. I believe Chinese interference being a big part of it. And so to get a majority so that Mark Carney and Anita Anand can hammer through, as I just had an interview with sinologist Dr. Charles Burton, he says that is Mark Carney is going full Jean Chrétien, taking us back to the 1990s when Chrétien went all in on, trade with Beijing. And it hasn't worked out well for Canada, and it won't. And so if Carney's doing that again, and he wants to scrape a majority over, not at the polls, full stop, I just think that's horrible.
Could you imagine if the government regulated, criminals, real threats, foreign interference, that sort of stuff in the same intensity that they want to regulate the internet and our media? We would probably have far fewer Canadian fugitives protected by various cartels. I have to be very careful with my language here so that this video doesn't get demonetized or taken down. So apologies for that, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get the gist of what I'm saying here.
He is currently the largest distributor of cocaine in Canada. Wedding collaborates closely with the Sinaloa Cartel, a foreign terrorist organization, to flood not only American, but also Canadian communities. His organization is responsible for importing approximately 60 metric tons of cocaine. Wedding is also accused of murdering a federal witness after he was indicted in 2024. He used a Canadian website called The Dirty News to post photographs of the witness and his wife in order to locate him, which ultimately succeeded.
Isn't it so funny to you to hear the left so frequently just regurgitate certain talking points about Canada? Oh, we're strong, we're secure. Yeah, we don't have that problem here. We do, though. We do, though. You just don't talk about it. And our law enforcement can't really do anything about it due to your bad policies, your lack of funding, your weird priorities that make no sense and don't help anybody at all. But the United States just announced that a former Canadian Olympian, Ryan James Wedding, is allegedly the biggest trafficker in the country and also ordered hits on a number of key witnesses, according to their investigations. Funny how Canada had nothing to say, nothing to see here, guys. We don't have anything like that going on. And if you think that we do, my gosh, you just should move to America. because that's American style politics. We literally had a Canadian athlete turned into an international cartel aligned kingpin. Think about that. And our media didn't break that. Nope, we didn't. And I'm willing to bet there was a lot of collaboration between Canadian authorities and those in the United States during this investigation, given the fact that Ryan James' wedding had a Canadian website, which he used to track and end the life of people, which he did successfully. And you will never guess who his lawyer is, Deepak Paradakar, whatever, I can't pronounce that, my apologies, who is also accused of facilitating some of these connections, assisting in bribery, helping with the end of life, and letting wedding listen to privileged and private conversations with other clients of his that wedding wanted to end the life of. Yeah, you can't make this up. You know, I think the biggest thing here, and this is what should really terrify Canadians, and if you recall that incident that took place in Toronto not terribly long ago with that father and son who were planning an attack, you can Google that if I can't really talk about it because I'll get censored on YouTube. It was the US, not Canada, who blew this open. In that case in Toronto, it was actually French authorities who had to inform Canadian authorities that there was an attack being planned in Toronto. That's terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. But sure, let's just give some more money, you know, to a European space agency. Yeah, okay, got it. Sure, that sounds really, really good. I cannot even believe this, actually. We're going to have a lot more to say about this in the coming days for sure, but for the essence of time, I will end it here. Thank you so very much for watching. Subscribe, like, follow, comment your thoughts down below, and as always, share this video. I will talk to you very soon.